Walk into the Louvre in Paris, you'll see it. The Sackler wing. Stroll through London's Victoria and Albert Museum. There it is again. Sackler Courtyard. 11,000 handmade porcelain tiles bearing their name. Westminster Abbey, that Gothic masterpiece, even has a window dedicated to them. The Sackler name is everywhere. On university buildings, art galleries, museums across the world. They're celebrating, honored, treated like philanthropic royalty. But here's what those gold-plated plaques don't tell you. This family didn't make their $14 billion fortune through innovation or hard work. They made it by creating the worst public health epidemic in American history. 200,000 dead, 50,000 deaths per year, millions addicted, families destroyed, communities devastated, all while the Sacklers got obscenely, unimaginably rich. And the sickest part? They knew exactly what they were doing, every step of the way. This isn't a story about a drug gone wrong. This is a story about corruption so deep, so calculated, so evil, that it makes cartel kingpins look like amateurs. Because the Sacklers didn't sell drugs on street corners. They corrupted doctors, bribed politicians, manipulated the FDA, built an empire on addiction, and then spent decades hiding behind charity donations and museum wings. Their weapon? OxyContin, a painkiller so addictive that 4 out of 5 heroin users started with prescription opioids. Their strategy? Lie to doctors, pay off everyone in the supply chain, target the poorest communities, and when people started dying by the thousands, settle lawsuits, seal records, and keep selling. For 30 years, the Sackler family had a secret. Not anymore, because today, you're about to learn how billionaires in lab coats became the deadliest drug dealers America has ever seen. Stay with me. 1952. 3 psychiatrist brothers, Arthur, Mortimer, and Raymond Sackler, buy a small pharmaceutical company called Purdue. Together, they authored over 100 research papers on mental illness. Respected, credible, trusted. But Arthur Sackler was more than a doctor. He was an advertising genius, and he saw something nobody else did. Medicine wasn't just about healing. It was about marketing. Arthur became the first person to convince the American Medical Association to run a color ad brochure. He took Valium, a drug meant strictly for anxiety, and marketed it for something he invented called psychic tension. Suddenly anyone could have psychic tension. Anyone could get a prescription. Valium became the first drug to hit $100 million in sales. Arthur Sackler was inducted into the Medical Advertising Hall of Fame. He didn't just sell medicine. He created a demand where none existed. Then came the 1980s. The hospice movement was growing. End-of-life care for terminally ill patients. Purdue released OxyContin, a morphine-based pill to help cancer patients sleep. In hospice care, addiction wasn't an issue. Patients would die soon anyway, but Purdue saw an opportunity. What if OxyContin could be marketed for general use, not just dying patients, everyone? That's when things got darker. OxyContin became the benchmark for pain relief. Then came the misinformation campaign. Several papers and articles claimed opioid addiction was minimal, overstated. A letter published in the New England Journal of Medicine stated addiction risk was less than 1%. That letter was later retracted, but it had already been cited over 600 times. The lie had spread, doctors believed it, and Purdue was ready to capitalize. If your blood is already boiling, hit subscribe right now, because what comes next is even worse. How the Sacklers turned doctors into drug dealers, how they targeted poor communities, and how they made billions while America burned. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Don't let this get buried. Enter Richard Sackler, Arthur's nephew, a research scientist at Purdue who became president in 1999. Richard was obsessed with finding new uses for the OxyContin. Just like his uncle Arthur, He was more interested in profits than patients. By the 1990s, OxyContin's patent was expiring. Purdue needed a replacement. They created OxyContin. Active ingredient? Oxycodone. Many doctors falsely believed oxycodone was weaker than morphine. It wasn't. It was 50% stronger. In 1999, an unpublished Purdue study found OxyContin's addiction rate was 13%. Not 1%, 13%. But that study never saw daylight. Instead, the FDA approved a claim that OxyContin's delayed absorption reduced abuse probability. The FDA examiner who approved that claim, he left the FDA shortly after. Within 2 years, he was working at Purdue. Corruption in broad daylight. In 2015, Purdue got FDA approval to market OxyContin to children as young as 11 years old. Almost immediately after OxyContin launched, addiction cases exploded. But Purdue didn't admit the drug was addictive. They blamed patients, said they weren't taking it as directed. Purdue even had to fire one of their own secretaries after she became addicted to OxyContin. The hypocrisy was staggering. But the real question is, how did OxyContin spread so fast? It wasn't by accident. Purdue knew exactly what they were doing, and they built a system to maximize addiction. If your blood is already boiling, hit subscribe right now, because what comes next is even worse. How the Sacklers turned doctors into drug dealers, how they targeted poor communities, how they made billions while America burned. Subscribe, turn on notifications. Don't let this get buried. Purdue's strategy for OxyContin began in 1995, targeting cancer patients for regulatory acceptance. Then came the lies. Sales reps were told the addiction rate was less than 1% a complete fabrication. Purdue paid off the entire supply chain. Distributors got rebates, pharmacists got refunds, patients got coupons, and academia received grants. Politicians got campaign donations, but the most important targets were doctors. Purdue flew them to seminars that were really golf trips and paid thousands of clinicians to speak. Prominent doctors on Purdue's payroll called opioids a gift from nature and claimed addiction was a medical myth. Purdue lobbied for regulations requiring doctors to ask patients to rate pain on a scale of 1 to 10, creating a quantifiable reason to prescribe opioids. The company rebranded pain relief as a sacred right, available to every American. By 2001, OxyContin sales surged past $1 billion. Prescriptions grew from 300,000 to almost 6 million. Abuse cases exploded, with studies showing direct correlations between prescription volume and overdose rates. Purdue even targeted poor areas with high manual labor. Like casinos targeting high rollers, Purdue tracked and targeted doctors who prescribed the most. Some regions had more prescriptions than people. Doctors were arrested by the hundreds for running pill mills. Purdue not only knew, they celebrated it. Internal memos read, dollars. It's bonus time. Top sales reps earned six-figure commissions. In 2001, Purdue paid out $40 million in bonuses. But things were about to get even worse. OxyContin was supposed to last 12 hours, enough for a good night's rest. But often it only lasted 8 hours. Purdue had two options: increase the frequency of doses, or increase the dosage. They chose the latter. Why? Because higher dosages meant higher addiction rates. Sales reps were strictly instructed to tell doctors to increase dosage amounts, not frequency. This created the perfect addiction cycle. Higher doses made patients feel withdrawal effects sooner. Then they'd take another pill for relief. Patients were prescribed more than they needed. As tolerance grew, they fell deeper into addiction. Every night, news reported someone dying from OxyContin. The pharmaceutical industry knew it was addictive, but they didn't care. Let me show you what opioid withdrawal actually looks like. Travis Reeder, a Johns Hopkins bioethics professor, had a crushed foot from a motorcycle accident. 6 surgeries, large amounts of pain medication. His doctor told him to wean off over 4 weeks. 3 days in, he was in serious withdrawal. I felt like I got the flu. My temperature went haywire. I couldn't sleep. His wife watched him get worse. Uncontrollable crying, bursting into tears randomly. Travis reached out to over a dozen doctors. Some told him to take stool softeners and drink water. No one could tell him how to escape withdrawal hell. It was the worst feeling I've ever had. Hands down. Other addicts describe it. I vomited almost every morning. I was constantly sick. Sweating with covers on. Freezing with covers off. You can die. Your heart can explode. Your blood pressure skyrockets. The hair on my head hurt. You're vomiting. Cold chills. Hot flashes. Restless legs moving all over because you can't stand being in your own skin. Anxiety attacks. Pain attacks. You start hyperventilating. This is what Purdue created. Millions experienced this. Many didn't survive. And the Sacklers? They got richer. Purdue always settled class action lawsuits, avoiding testimony and sealing records without admitting wrongdoing. In 2004, they settled a deceptive marketing suit over OxyContin's failure to last 12 hours, paying $10 million under a confidentiality agreement. In 2007, the federal government filed a criminal felony charge against Purdue for purposefully pushing misconceptions. The company admitted exploiting doctor misconceptions for profit, resulting in a $600 million settlement. The Sackler family name was excluded from the guilty plea, with an attached agreement protecting Sackler-related entities. Richard Sackler's testimony, released in 2019, showed he knew about OxyContin dangers in 2001. After 59 overdose deaths, his email read, "That is not too bad. Could have been far worse." By 2010, Purdue created a new formula that was harder to abuse. However, a study found 70% of users who switched began using heroin. The reformulation increased the rate people turned to cheaper, harder opioids. Then Purdue lobbied for the FDA to prevent any other company from remaking the drug, claiming it was prone to abuse. In 2013, the FDA agreed, securing competition-free selling of their billion-dollar baby. With destruction across America, Purdue moved to other markets. In 2016, an investigation warned the World Health Organization about the Sackler-owned company's international gearing. Ironically, in 2018, the Sacklers obtained a patent for a drug treating opioid addiction, poised to profit even more from the crisis they created. In 2019, Purdue settled another lawsuit with Oklahoma for $270 million. To avoid personal testimony, the Sackler family pledged $75 million to an addiction studies center. Purdue is currently considering bankruptcy amid thousands of lawsuits. Do you know someone whose life was destroyed by opioids? Someone who lost a family member? Comment below. Let's show the world how many lives the Sacklers destroyed. Because these aren't just statistics, they're real people. Comment now. The Sackler name was kept far from OxyContin on purpose, but now the world is waking up. Protesters began assembling against the Sacklers. In February 2019, protesters took over the Guggenheim Museum in New York. Prescription papers fell from balconies, symbolic of how carelessly doctors on Purdue's payroll once wrote them. Chants of "Shame on Sackler" echoed through New York streets. The Sacklers' favorite domain, the art world, was overtaken by people who had enough. In 2019, art galleries worldwide began rejecting their money. The UK's National Portrait Gallery rejected a $1.3 million Sackler Trust donation. London's Tate Museum and New York's Guggenheim announced they would no longer accept Sackler donations. Should Sackler descendants be held accountable? Some never owned Purdue shares but bear the Sackler name. Some collect checks estimated at $1 billion per year. The New Yorker argues money from ill gains should counter the impact. John D. Rockefeller's descendants used their fortune to fund climate change resources, countering their company's harms. Should the Sacklers do the same? The last of the three original Sackler brothers died in 2017. But Richard, who ran Purdue and other board members are still alive and being sued. These settlements seem like pennies. Purdue reportedly earned $35 billion from OxyContin. The epidemic killed over 200,000 since 1997. One senator called settlements an expensive license for criminal misconduct. Sure, the Sacklers aren't solely responsible. Other drugs were available. Other factors existed, but their role is undeniable. If this opened your eyes to who really caused the opioid epidemic, do two things. First, subscribe. Second, share this video. Because the Sacklers still have power, still have influence. They don't want this spreading. But 200,000 dead Americans deserve justice. The families destroyed deserve answers. Subscribe, share, and never forget. The Sackler name isn't on museum walls by accident. It's there to hide the blood on their hands.